gone into real estate agents' offices, and I've, connected with as many real estate agents as I can and try and build these relationships. While I was doing that, the first few years that I was a home inspector, I actually built my own house here in Jordan Point. And I had always been on the opposite end of doing inspections where for new construction. I had never built a house at that point. So after I built my first house, I realized that there was a market for that particular product. A lot of people don't understand why home inspections are actually really important with new construction. And the other thing that I learned is building a house can be a very frustrating process. You as a home buyer, you're not familiar with the production side of building a house.
Rich, may I jump in real quick?
Sure.
I'm going to finish that, but I think we just got live on Facebook. We've been talking for just a few minutes leading into this. But for anyone who may just be joining us now, we're here with Rich Vedder of Vedder Home Inspections and learning all about the importance of home inspections in the buying process. Probably a couple interesting stories about that, and also specifically about new construction, where there's a ton of new construction going on in the Triangle area, specifically in that sort of 540 loop right now, whether it's Wake Forest or out that direction, and especially southwestern Wake around the Apex, Holly Springs, Fuquay, Varina sort of section of Southwest Wake. It's just exploding with new construction still. So we're going to dive into that. We were just talking about Rich is based in Apex, built a new home there just a few years ago, and it sort of launched him into this specific industry. So Rich, sorry for interrupting there. I just want to bring people up to speed, and again, welcome. And so tell us a little bit about, let's jump back into the new construction home building process.
Yes. Okay. And like I was saying, I built a house about 2.5 years ago myself in Jordan Point. Wonderful community, by the way. Almost sold out. When I was doing that, I had always been on the opposite side of the fence. I was just a home inspector that came in and did my job and moved out. I didn't realize all of the other things that go along with building new construction. It can be sometimes a fabulous, but also sometimes very frustrating process as you move along. Most clients don't understand the actual production that goes into it. A new construction house these days, a production build, not a custom build, think of it as an orchestra. Okay, your PM or CM, project manager or construction manager, is the conductor, and out in that orchestra are the rest of the pieces, and your PM is there to conduct all 30 to 40 of these trades. Okay. Yeah. And that's a daunting task. It really is. And let's couple with the fact that, let's get realistic, these guys are construction workers. If they mess something up, they're really, really, really not eager to tell their boss. Yeah. So, it's an interesting process. So let's talk a little bit about, or do you have a question, Chad?
The metaphor of the orchestra is really interesting because you've got all the different sections and they have to be all brought into unity as one, right?
Correct.
And another way maybe to think of it, we were talking about, Rich, go ahead and show off your new Samsung S20, is that what it is?
Yeah, I got the S20 Ultra.
All right, so imagine that, the brand new product that Samsung launched, and yet all the different manufacturers that supplied parts to create that one phone that Samsung puts out. It's not all Samsung subsidiaries, it's all these different parts, or if it's an iPhone, it's the same thing. From all over the world, those parts are being brought together into one unit that had a design and specifications, and yet there may be all these different quality issues at the dozens of different manufacturing plants that are creating the parts.
Exactly.
Very similar to building a new house in many ways, right?
Very, very similar. That is another way. It's an excellent way to put it. Yeah, I mean, it's an orchestra, and like I said, it can sometimes be a very, very frustrating experience, or it can be a very great uplifting experience. From my own knowledge, I can tell you your PM or CM is the difference in any build. If you have a PM that is constantly behind the 8 ball, you're going to have a hectic build. If you have a PM that is always on top of things, every time you ask him a question, he goes, yep, already on it, know about it, taking care of it. That means you're going to have a fantastic build. And that's my experience from what I've seen.
So it's so interesting. If I'm working with clients and they go in to meet the on-site sales agent, you're kind of hiring, you are selecting the neighborhood and the model and maybe the choices that are there, but you never get to interview the construction manager. I mean, even if you went under contract, sometimes they turn over or get pulled from one job location to another community if it's a big sort of national builder.
Yes.
There, but you're right, it does make a big difference. And the buyer really doesn't have much control over who it is that they're hiring to be in that role. So it's almost like those initial meetings with the construction manager, when I've had clients, usually there's sort of that first meeting with them, and that's probably a really important time to build rapport so that you're not just a unit, but you become more of a person that they want to work with and do a great job for if you personalize it.
Exactly, and that's another thing that I try and tell people. The construction manager, production manager, they are there to help you. They're there to do the best that they can, and you need to kind of sometimes give them a little slack because they have, like we said, they have an orchestra that they have to deal with, and sometimes that gets just as hectic as you can imagine. If you have all these people that you have to deal with on one product.
Yeah.
So your rapport with them, like you said, is very important. There's going to be times where you're going to get a little mad at your construction manager because he's not meeting your dates, but there's times it's not in his control a lot of the times. I can tell you from experience.
Is we've got 7 clients that are under contract for building new construction from ground up right now.
Yeah.
And they are ahead of schedule.
Right.
Which is so odd because there's this little slowdown in April of new people going under contract. So permits are happening faster.
Yep.
They're getting sign off from the county faster on different stages. And the crews are slightly more available because there was that little slowdown in March and April. So they're moving people up. If they thought they were going to close in November or December, they're now saying maybe September, October is when they'll end up closing.
Yeah, no, I've been hearing that too. And that's a very important point because that is what happens in new construction. Okay. Once all these builders, you guys, the clients typically don't realize it, that I see the same framers in different neighborhoods. One day they'll be in a Ryan neighborhood framing 3 houses, and then the next day they'll be in a Lennar neighborhood, and then the next day they'll move on to a Toll Brothers neighborhood. So all these builders, believe it or not, share the same workforce.
Yeah.
Okay. And what happens when, for instance, we get a bunch of rain like we have had, the plumbers can't come out and do their job. Well, they've already been on the schedule, so that delays everybody down the road. Everybody gets delayed. So that's kind of the way this works. And that's why it's called a production house.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's very simple.
Even a custom build though, they've got probably their go-to plumber that they're going to work, 1 or 2 of them, but it still is, it's still subject to their availability when they're pulling it in. Right?
Well, interestingly enough, last summer I was doing a custom construction Lloyd house, and because they're not a Ryan,
right? When you were the home inspector at the end.
Yeah, I was the home inspector, and because they were not a Ryan house or a Lennar, okay, they couldn't get the plumbers to finish off one little section.
Oh no!
Because the Ryans, the Lennars, they had all the plumbers monopolized. Because when you're a plumber, are you gonna focus in on this one job, or are you gonna focus in on this company that gives you hundreds of jobs?
Big account, yeah.
Yeah, and that's
Well, so Rich, I know we've been talking a lot about new construction. So let's pivot a little bit to the inspection process. So we talked a little bit about sort of either, with a resale home, you typically get one inspection with a home inspector, and then there may be a follow-up with an electrician or a roofer or someone in
Correct.
a specialist.
Correct.
With new construction, sometimes some people don't get any inspection. Some people get one. I've heard we've had some clients get 3 inspections.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A pre-drywall right before closing, and then a 1-year inspection.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, in your experience with a resale or new, well, let's stick with new construction right now. With new construction, what are you seeing people do, and what would you recommend and why?
Another excellent question. My company has, as you know, is a new construction package, which consists of a pre-dry wall, a close, and a 1-year. Those are the 3 inspections that I do recommend to everybody. They each have different reasons for them at different phases. Let's speak first to the pre-dry wall. Okay. The pre-dry wall is probably, in my estimate, one of the most important inspections that you're going to have. And
so for those who might not have, maybe haven't been through this process, when is that in the build process? So you go on contract for a house, you do your design selection, it gets permitted, they pour the foundation, and the sticks go up.
Yep.
Maybe a little electrical happens. Like when is it exactly that pre-drywall inspection happens?
Well, and that's exactly it, is right before they insulate and put up the drywall. The reason for that is because all of your major systems have been put in. Your electric system has been put in, your plumbing system has been put in, your ductwork has been run, obviously your framing has been done. Now, after this point, once they hang drywall and insulation, this is the only time that I can see what's behind your walls.
Yeah.
I do not have X-ray vision. If I had X-ray vision, I would be the richest home inspector.
You don't have those glasses from Boys Life magazine or whatever that was at the back?
I hate to tell you, they don't work. I wish they did. But yeah, no, this is the one time where I can see behind it. I can take a look at your electric to make sure that they stapled and strapped everything right. I can take a look at your framing to make sure that they put your joist hangers in there properly. Plenty of times when I'm at a pre-drywall and they are literally about ready to put up insulation the next day, I will find things that are wrong. For instance, they put in the improper joist hangers, not big enough to handle the load of the house.
Yeah, so typically, like, the construction manager would come through and they do a full walkthrough before drywall gets hung. Typically, yep. I mean, yep. they would, right?
Yeah.
And yet they're human, right?
Yes, exactly. They are human.
I think about it kind of like, if you ever have built new construction, you go through and you blue tape all the like cosmetic things that you want the builder to touch up the week before closing. Just, there's a mark on the wall or it's missing paint there or blah, blah, blah. There's, anytime you walk into a house, you're going to find either hundreds the first time you walk through because they know they're not done yet, or maybe 15. And you come back again, you have 4 people looking at it, and you come back the next day and you're like, the light's a little bit different. And all of a sudden you see, oh, there's 10 more things that I need attention. How did I miss that yesterday, right?
Exactly. And you know what, here's another example. When you have your production manager in there and he's looking at this house, he has looked at this house literally hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Okay. How many times have you walked past the same toy? I have small children. Yeah. And as you walk past it, eventually it becomes part of the background. And you just don't see it anymore. And that's what happens in some of these builds. That's the way I like to approach it with my PMs and my CMs is, look, I'm not here to criticize you here. I'm here for a second set of eyes.
Yeah. And they want to build it right. They don't want a mistake happening,
exactly.
2 months later or right before closing.
Yeah, they don't want what's happening. At one of my houses, actually, that I did they didn't hire anybody for a pre-drywall or a close, and they hired me for a 1 year. And
1 year after close, before
the
is over.
Yeah, and half of their house is actually slanting down. Now, I probably would have caught this at the pre-drywall phase, and we wouldn't be in this position at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, and now that's another good point about pre-drywalls. Typically, I find either next to nothing, small little items, or large ticket items. In pre-drywalls, there is really no middle ground.
Yeah.
It's either little items or, oh my gosh, we need
Yeah.
to get somebody in here.
So it's kind of like insurance, people carry fire insurance for the one in the blah, blah, blah chance that it'll happen because it has a big impact,
It
right?
really does. Yeah. And
But
the other thing is I've noticed, and I hate to say this, but when they know I'm coming for a pre-drywall, the builds are definitely better. I can say that for a fact.
Yep.
They pay a little more attention at that point. They're not as yeah.
Which is human, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it's just that makes sense that would be the case. And they oftentimes when we call the construction manager or whoever we're working with to let them know that we're intending for this to help schedule it, they're like, they kind of say, no, that's not necessary, or we do that, right?
Right.
And when they say, I know, it's just part of our process to do it. It's still a partnership. It's still supportive, but they're not always wild that it's happening. Somewhat because they just don't want the time frame thrown off if something gets done. That's one of the concerns, right?
Yes, that is exactly it. For them, they are always on a schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. And for all these builders, that schedule is typically tight when it's a production build.
Yeah.
And they don't want to have to, they don't want to take time out of their schedule. And you can't blame them because they have people that they have to answer to as well.
Yeah.
How come you're not on schedule? How come you're not on schedule? How come you're not on budget? How come you're,
All right. So, I say if we were to jump ahead to the few days before closing, before they finally buy the house and move in, you do another inspection there. And that's probably a little bit more akin to, a home inspection of a couple-year-old resale home, right? There's probably not big things that you're finding necessarily, but there could be, right?
There can be, usually at the close inspections, a lot of what that is. And here's a prime example. In new construction, a lot of times what I find are broken roof trusses up there. Okay. And they have been repaired. The thing is you need to have a letter from an engineer that says this repair is okay. Because when you go down 10 years down the road to sell this house, someone like me is going to go up there and go, hey, you have a problem up here. You've got a repair. Where's your letter from an engineer? Then you're stuck on the hook for that $800 to get an engineer. When we're at the close, when we're at the close phase, we can transfer that to the builder.
Yeah.
So I just,
Yep, I've seen that. We've seen that several times. Like here in Village Square, it's usually for a lot of there was a section of the community called Stand Pack in Village Square, where all those homes, that was the construction company that was bought by Cal Atlantic, that's now part of Lennar. But they built those, and they're sort of going through their first wave of turnover as they're 4 to 6 years old. And we're seeing that again and again, that a lot of those buyers didn't get a home inspection and didn't catch that in the home inspection when it first happened during the new construction. So they've had to go back, and it's like $350, $400 to get an engineer out just to write a letter saying, yep, slap 2x4s alongside it and you're good, but or in the detached garages, we see that a lot too. They may have inspected the main house, but not the garage.
Correct. And honestly, these builders know how to shore up these roof trusses. They're very good at it.
Yeah.
So typically they do not fail inspection from an engineer. So that's it. And we just want to make sure that we transfer that to the builder. You don't want to pay for it later. And it happens all the time. Here's one of the more interesting facts about that. The fix is actually stronger than the original roof truss.
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, because your roof trusses, your engineered roof trusses, are based on the most the toughest geometric shape, which is the triangle, which can handle a large load. And that's why everything is the way it is inside of your roof trusses. It's all built on the triangle.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen it many times.
Wow. All right. So everyone, that's pretty common to get an inspection just before you purchase a house. But something that I really like is this idea of the 1-year inspection, because there may be things that you want to get taken care of. It's sort of your last chance to hold the builder's feet to the fire before you sign the contract and pay the money over to get them to take care of something. And that's a little bit of leverage that both getting the home inspection and working with an agent when you're buying new construction is really going to help guide people that additional leverage to make sure that those things happen. I often tell people, like, you don't necessarily hire an agent for new construction when everything goes perfectly and smoothly. But the reality is probably 30 to 50% of the times, something comes up significant that you have to work out with the builder. And I think the agents and having a home inspector come in and do their process really helps bring that leverage when they're buying, many, many $100,000 brand new house. So that's a big value add right there. It's not for when things run smoothly, and that maybe 50% of the time, but it's when things go sideways. It's the experience that you bring.
Well, and let me talk a little bit about the 1 year, which is one of the things I like to tell people. I like to educate people on the 1 year.
Yeah.
One of the things that people don't realize is at the 1 year mark, okay, your house is now 1 year old. Okay, what happened during construction is they dug up all the dirt in your lot, they poured footings, and then they put it all back, and then they put thousands upon thousands of pounds on an area that they just dug up.
Yeah.
They do their best to stabilize the dirt out, but what really stabilizes it out is that first year that your house is on the lot. In that first year, your house does 95% of its settling. The other 5% of it is over the next 60 years. And what the most
water issues, right?
Yeah. And what the biggest thing is, your house has to go through an expansion, a summer, and a contraction, a winter. And that's when it kind of goes like this, and it goes like this, and then it kind of finds where it's going to sit in the ground. Okay. Well, it's doing that.
So I just want to put a point on that real quick. So is the actual thaw and freeze and an intense summer heat cycle where the building itself actually expands and contracts.
Exactly.
That's when it kind of shakes in and settles and gets mostly settled in.
Yeah, that first year.
Difference if it's a crawl space or a slab or a basement?
It really doesn't make that big of a difference. There's little nuances that are a little bit different that I look for versus, when you have a crawl space versus a slab versus a basement. There are some different things that we look for structurally at that point, at the 1 year point.
Yeah.
But they all settle somewhat similarly.
So what would it look like if it's gone bad?
Well, and that's I was speaking with about the house that was settling. Half of the house is actually settling down at a different angle. That
it's typical to have little cracks in the plaster or in the drywall. I mean, some settlement, maybe near the garage or something like that, there may be little settlement cracks inside your house that are really pretty much cosmetic. They're really minor.
And typically you see those above the doors a lot. And it's the way the crack runs also is what alerts home inspectors to whether or not we have a typical settling crack or we have a structural issue.
Yeah.
Basements are a good example of that. If you see a crack that runs this way or kind of this way, that's usually a typical settlement crack. If you see a crack that runs this way, that usually means something's pushing in.
That's not
good. That's not good. It's either pushing. Yes. So those are the difference. And to be honest with you, that's the reason why I really try to tell people they need that 1 year inspection. It's not for the cosmetic stuff that they can see themselves.
Yeah.
Okay. You already know about the door handle that falls off every, fifth time you use it. You already know about, the kitchen cabinet that does this.
And that's handyman stuff, right?
Yeah.
We're
But
talking, when your inspection is for the, major foundation.
But tell me when the last time you entered your crawl space was.
Yeah. 6.5 years ago when we bought our house.
And
Don't
usually
think I even looked in mine. Don't
yeah.
tell people.
and usually that's where I find it. I was at one about 6 months. Yeah, it was about 6 months ago. I could have literally taken a fish and thrown it into the crawl space, and it would have happily swam off.
Wow.
Yes.
I've seen some crawl spaces like that.
Now that's a unique one. Typically, we don't see that much moisture intrusion, and there were 4 separate things happening to cause that. Yeah. It really did look like a swimming pool in that crawl space.
Wow.
And the homeowner would have never known it. Never. Well, he would have found out about 3 years later when all the mold was coming up from underneath the house.
So, so I want to go to, we're at about a half hour in right here. So maybe in the last 5 minutes, I'd love to talk about resale home inspections. And, I think some of it is maybe getting, one of the big conversations we have with clients anytime they're buying is a resale home is that, there will be things that are found. Any home inspector will find several things with a home. Some of them may be minor, some of them may be more significant. And Lisa and I have these conversations all the time with clients about how, it's so common that there's a hint of buyer's remorse when it comes to the home inspection, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get so excited, you found the dream home, you won the offer, you're picturing your kids growing up there or whatever it is that you're doing, and you're so excited about it. And then you get the 60-page home inspection report that a lot of it's just like formatting the different sections, but it's pointing out every single thing that is, slightly to majorly wrong with the house. So tell me a little bit about how you approach that conversation when you're meeting with clients, because you are going to find stuff. What do you really think is most important to share and convey with buyers when they meet with you to go over the home inspection?
Well, what's the most important thing to share and convey? Trying to think of a good way to answer that question. That's a pretty tall one, because there's so much information.
I mean, Rich, you're really good with having that conversation, and I would love it something along the lines of like, if this was my home that I was buying, and we see 30, 40, 50 of these a year, home inspection reports. Like, here are the things that, like, this is very common and typical to find this type of thing, right? And then, but this one thing here, like zeroing in on a couple of the things that really stand out of that's in the lines of normal, or you're starting to push the edge of normal, or whoa, bear, we got something that needs to be addressed here, right?
Yeah, and you're right. I do have I think it comes naturally to me when we have that conversation with the clients. That's why it's such a tough question for me to answer, because it's just something that I just do myself personally. It's just part of my personality.
Well, let's role play a little then. All right. All right. So one of the things is, let's say there's a little bit of, this is a 10-year-old home, and there's a little bit of evidence of slight mold in the rafters in the crawl space. There's mold in my house.
Well, I would speak to that and basically say, well, we do live in North Carolina, where the humidity levels are extremely high. So I see actually a lot of that. Now, here's one of the things that, when I'm talking to a customer, there's 2 types of mold. 2 types of growth. There is the hard growth and there's the surface growth. Okay. Surface growth, which is the majority of it, can just be wiped off. And it's just because the humidity levels are so high in North Carolina. We see a lot of that in the crawl spaces all the time. It's nothing to be alarmed about. Now, as one of them, when I lifted up the vapor barrier and underneath it was an entire mushroom field, okay, then I'm a little different the way I approach that, because we have a real problem at that point. You know, that's a health issue, because all those spores are going to eventually come up and enter your home. And I don't want to see that.
And mold is everywhere, right? Mold is
mold is
on inside the house. Mold is anywhere. Mold is in a new construction house. Right?
Yes.
You know, the spores are in the air.
Yes, exactly.
But it is about that level and degree of, and I think that's what's so helpful when you probably are in 100, 200, crawl spaces a year, right? You're going to see the range. And that's actually one of the values that a home inspector brings, is to be able to put things in perspective.
Exactly. And you're right, that it's you need to know the different types of growth, and what really is alarming. Some of it's just normal, like you and I both said. We do live in North Carolina. Look at today. It's nice and rainy and humid out there.
Lovely.
Yes, great weather. Great for home inspection, because when I'm looking at your roof, I can see if there's a leak. Pretty easy.
From the inside.
That's yeah, exactly. So, yeah, that's kind of the way I approach it, I guess.
Great. Let's see, Rich, what is, if you had, we'll sort of go out on this maybe. If you had a piece of advice for someone who is, they're starting their home search process, and maybe they'll go under contract in the next few weeks, what would you share with them, or what do you think is some of the best things to keep in mind when it comes to the home inspection of a resale house? What's something you'd really love for them to sort of keep in mind?
You know what? And it really has nothing to do with the home inspection, honestly. Keep in mind, if you're buying a house, what your needs are. For instance, if you have small children, you need to have a house that's conducive to small children. If you're an older person and you're looking to downsize, you don't buy the 4,000 square foot house.
Yeah.
And and that's actually your job, Chad. You fit.
I know, but from a home inspection standpoint, when they get to that point of like starting the home inspection, I often preview for people that they're going to get an inspection report. There will be things that are found, and all homes are going to have to have items right there. And I think we really work with people to zero in on, you're in a negotiation where the contract that you've agreed to is an as-is house. Like the seller is not obligated to do major repairs. And yet, if there's something significant, the same thing we share with sellers is, if there's something significant that if you were to continue living in your house for the next year, you would get that done, because that's what you do to maintain your house. It makes sense to address that. And there are lots of ways you can address that, but we've got this phrase, we talk about when you're buying a house, you want to address issues about watertight. So if there's plumbing or roof or water in the foundation, you want your house watertight. Health and safety issues, if there's electrical, health and safety, if there's radon or viral, smoke detectors and things like that, you want to have. And then major mechanical, like electrical and HVAC, those are kind of big three things that we point people to. And I bet that's kind of the way the report comes across too.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
But you get them focused on the big three. The rest is kind of like, oh, the door doesn't close quite right, or
a lot of them are maintenance items. Yeah, a lot. They're just, you're gonna have to recaulk your bathroom every 5-6 years, because caulk only lasts so long, and eventually it will dry up and you will have to recaulk your bathroom. And that's just simply that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and you're right. We focus in on the major stuff, safety, HVAC, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Man, Rich, I really appreciate you coming on. Cheers. Happy hour to you. I appreciate your partnership and the great work you do with our clients together and with our market center too, the involvement that you have. But really appreciate your work and how you support clients through a big purchase decision,
Biggest purchase in their life. And I do appreciate you having me on. It was a pleasure being here. It's a lot of fun to talk about this stuff when we're not on site.
That's right.
And we can just kind of be ourselves a little bit. Yeah. It's always a lot of fun.
Well, cheers to you, my friend.
Take care.
See you soon. Take care.